Hi, can somebody confirm you can hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. People are still logging in, so let's give them a minute. Sorry for being late. I had to go to the bathroom and thought I had enough time and took longer than I expected. Before we begin, are there any questions? Let me share my screen. Somebody just sent me a message, chat message. I don't use chat. I don't use emoticons. When I share my screen, I don't get to see the student messages. So uh, I don't even use them. If you want to text me, please send me an email. And when I took the Zoom class, they suggested that two instructors teach the Zoom class. One to check the chat and respond to chat and the emoticons and whatever else, and the other to lecture. Well, you've only got one instructor, so I'm only going to be lecturing. And like I said, if you want to give me a comment, you need to unmute yourself, meaning I have you muted. And so to talk, you've got to unmute the microphone and uh, and then mute it when you're done talking. But or send me a text. Any questions about that? All right, you should be seeing my screen now, and this is microbiology, the lecture. This class initially only had one lab and one lecture, and there were so many people on the wait list that they decided to bring in another lab, and I will be teaching both labs. One lab is at 2:30, the other at 6:30. All right, there's my contact information. I actually prefer you send the email to the Canvas email site. I will be checking my Canvas email at least every other day. Oftentimes I'll be checking it every day, but at least every other day, especially on the weekend. I probably won't check it both Saturday and Sunday. The Clark.edu email, I only check it about twice a week. The reason is that I get a lot of junk mail sent to the Clark email, and so I'm just not going to check it very often. So if you want a quick email response, please send it to the Canvas email. I do have an office at Clark. It's an SPG 164. However, excuse me, SPG 354. The SPG 164 is my mail stop, but I'm not going to be on campus this quarter, so you do better to send me an email, or if you want to get together, we'll do it over Zoom. And the best time to do it is actually after I'm done talking in the lab, but you may also set up a time arrangement with me online. The textbook for this class is Microbiology and Introduction by Totoro, Funk, and Case. The main options are you can buy the printed textbook in the bookstore. It's the third custom edition made for Clark College. That would be the 12th edition if you were to buy the entire new textbook, which is not the most recent edition of the textbook. I think there's a 13th edition out now. They have not come up with a better edition for Clark College, meaning a newer edition for Clark College. You can also rent or buy the e-textbook, and that information is there. The bookstore usually sends information by UPS to your home address, so you don't actually go into the bookstore to buy it anymore. There are some optional texts for this class. There's the Atlas for Microbiology by LeBoff Pierce. This book provides photographs of microorganisms. that you would need to know about. And it's good in that sense. I do provide pictures online for you, or you can get your own pictures online. Like I said, it's an optional textbook, and the other optional textbook is the microbiology coloring book. You should become familiar with Canvas and the other resources. Obviously, you should become familiar with my Canvas website for the class. Let me show you that now. Scroll up. It has many important documents here. There's something you should read right away. There's the syllabus, which I'll talk about in a little bit, how to get student and technical help, how to modify your Canvas site. So if I change something, you'll be notified. My YouTube site, which I don't think I've talked about yet, and that is this class. If everything goes well, let me check to make sure everything's well. There it is. If ever you see that I'm not recording and I'm lecturing, please let me know so that I can record it. Otherwise, there will not be a recording at my YouTube website. Uh, this I'll talk about in the lab if I haven't talked about it yet. This is a link to the textbook chapters. We have the first three chapters of the textbook completely online, including chapter 10, which is we teach with chapter 1. And then all the chapter summaries for all the other chapters. So chapter 5, let's go to that. Actually, I just go to it here. Well, that's on. It's not opening. Here it is. It's only the summary for all the other chapters, and that's to ensure that you do buy the textbook. But I requested that the first chapters be made online and available to students in case the bookstore was ever out of textbooks. We've had that happen occasionally. So only the first three chapters you can find online. This is something I need to talk about, and that is I have a little link here going to a web page which I got student discussions. This is your place for discussing topics with other members of the class when you want to communicate with your classmates. You want to start an online study group, this is the place to do it. Ask a question about it and see if people respond. To encourage you to use the student discussion, I'm going to give you 1 point of extra credit if during the first 2 weeks you post whether you want the labs to be graded 1 time, as in the first lab will be graded only 1 time, or the first week's lab, or 2 times, which we will do in the second week of the lab. So after the second week, this will be shut down. I won't give any further extra credit points, but I'll go in and do as the majority wishes. Surprisingly, last term, a whole bunch of students complained about the labs being graded 2 times. If the lab is graded 2 times, the first grading will be a normal grading, and I will inform you what the questions are that are answered incorrectly. And if I get that grading done by Wednesday morning, then by next Saturday, you can put in your updated answers, and then I'll grade the lab for the second time. That'll be the last time, and that'll be your final grade. And I'll give you the correct answers if you still have the answer incorrect. The second grading will be for full credit, meaning the first grading will not count. If, however, I am slower and it takes me after Wednesday morning to get the lab graded, then I will postpone the second grading till the second Saturday after the lab is due the first time. Any questions about that? So state what you want. Like I stated last term, a whole bunch of people wanted it graded only one time, and that was a surprise to me. But I decided to make it optional this term, and you guys can decide what it is after the second week. Like I said, the first week, it'll only be graded one time. The second week, it will be graded two times. And then after that, it'll be how the majority of the class decides. Any questions? All right. So I'll put that in the student discussion and I'll give you 1 point of extra credit. And then after that, you can use student discussions to discuss topics among yourselves. I will not ever answer anything here unless I happen to be going through it, which I probably won't. And I see an incorrect answer, I'll give you the correct answer. If you want a correct answer from me, then you should email me the question. This has a little information about Zoom, the Zoom invites that I sent you, which I assume you got because you're in the class. And then we have the avoiding plagiarism tutorial. You must complete all items in this section. Discussing the lockdown browser requirements. This class requires the use of lockdown browser for all quizzes and exams, and it requires the use of Respondus Monitor for some of the quizzes and exams. Like the final requires both Respondus Monitor and Lockdown Browser. It does give you the avoid plagiarism tutorial. This is a tutorial that the Clark College Library made, teaching you about plagiarism, how not to plagiarize, and how to quote something to make sure you're not plagiarizing. If you ever use three or more words from somebody else, you should put it in quotes and then state where you got it from. And then it's not plagiarizing. It doesn't talk about AI because this tutorial was made before AI became widely available. But if ever you're using information from AI, you should put it in quotes and discuss where you got it from, whichever AI you got it from, which is usually a web page, but wherever you got it from. If you got it from your phone, just say, I don't know, phone Siri or something like that. You may use AI in this course, but if you ever use AI to answer a question or to answer a lab question or to answer a quiz question, which you shouldn't do, then you should put it in quotes and say where you got it from. Failure to do so, it will be penalized, meaning I'm not going to mark you down if you use AI, but I want to keep track of how many students are using AI. I imagine eventually almost everyone will, but at the moment, last term, there were only a few, maybe 5 out of 20 students who were using AI, and I'm just wanting to keep track of that. The tutorial must be done before you can take the avoiding plagiarism quiz. The quiz, let me back up on that. You have to take a look at the class guide for APA citation style as well. And then when you've done these three things, you can take the plagiarism quiz and the week 2 of lecture can be accessed once you take the all three items in the plagiarism tutorial, avoiding plagiarism tutorial. The plagiarism quiz must be taken by this Saturday. It does require the use of Lockdown Browser and Respondus, what the heck is it called? Monitor. I'm requiring it because this is an early place which is easy to get you to do it and get it up and running on your system. And I'm stated that it should be done this Saturday, But if you don't get it done, you can do this assignment until January 18th, and it will be full credit if you do it by January 18th. Try and get it done by the 11th, because by the 18th you have to get things done or else you can't get the assignments done. If you do not take this quiz and get 100% on it, you will get 0 points on the infectious disease project, and it's a 100-point project. However, on the plagiarism quiz, you may do 7 attempts of it, and they will be the same questions, although the answers will shuffle, meaning what was in position A may move down to position C or something like that. But it will be the same questions. I've never had a student who needed to take it more than twice to get 100%. Any questions about any of that? This quiz will be worth 20 points itself, so it is graded. I've never had a student who didn't get 100%, but if you don't, then you will get 0% on the infectious disease project. Any question about any of that? All right, so go take a look at the web page. It has week 1 lecture, some topics to do. I'll talk about the extra credit. I guess I can talk about it now. You have 2 extra credit assignments due by January 11th. You can send me an extra credit picture of your face. It'll only go on my grade book. I found that an easy way for me to learn students' names is to see their smiling face when I'm putting in the grades. And no one will ever see this except for me, but I'll give you one. Well, I think it's 3 points of extra credit.
Cool.
If you send that to me, yeah. Um, oh, didn't mean to do that. Let's go home again. If you don't have a phone or a digital picture to email me, just ask someone who has a phone to take a picture on their phone, email it to you, and then you can take the email picture and submit it to Canvas. Oh, the other extra credit is the extra credit study sheet. I should probably do that. This is worth a total of 3 points, but 3 points for your daily schedule tab, and then 3 points for your study schedule tab for microbiology. Let me get this out of the way. Come here, and I probably can get this. Um, Not quickly finding it, so I'll go ahead and just download it because it'll display better.
I had a question. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you, but your microphone is still low.
Yeah, I had a question. Are we allowed to use notes on tests?
Yes, but there is a catch, and that is the tests are timed. So you may use your book and your notes, but realize that if you do that, you will only be able to answer about 2 questions, and then you'll run out of time on the quiz or the final, in which case all other questions will be marked wrong that you ran out of time from. So you can use your book or your notes, but you really need to know the material beforehand because, like I said, you'll only have enough time to look up 1 or 2 questions.
Okay, thank you for
About
that
that.
information.
All right, turn your microphone off because um, for some reason yours was not working well. All right, so this tab here, let me Maybe I can shrink it and it'll show better. It's showing you your daily schedule in the first worksheet tab, schedule, and you should basically fill this entire thing out with all the things you're doing every week. You can leave blank where you're studying for microbiology, and in log 1, this is your worksheet for your lifetime studying in microbiology for week 1. If it's for all other weeks, you need to state it, say for week 1 and all other weeks. But if week 2 you're doing a different study schedule, put it in log 2. And for week 3, if you're doing a different study schedule, put it in week 3. If you need additional weeks for study schedule, just create another tab here. Make another tab. Let me see if I can show that down. There it is. I've never had a student who needed more than 3 logs. Generally, students only need 3, whatever you call these tabs. The schedule, you always need 2, schedule and the study schedule for microbiology. The schedule is your daily schedule. If you put in a complete schedule, I'll give you 3 points. And you don't have to be specific, like you can put family time. You can just put work, whatever. You don't need to be detailed on it, but you do need to fill it out for 3 points. And then your daily schedule. And not your daily study log, which there should be at least one there, one for each week if you have a different week of studying. This is just estimated. The only comments I would ever give would be if it's not complete, like you only put in half the daily schedule, I don't know, Monday through Wednesday, and you leave Thursday through Sunday blank. You won't get full credit if you do that, by the way. Or if you don't put in enough, if you don't put in enough study hours, I'm going to put in a comment saying you realize that you're not studying enough for what the average student needs. You'll get full credit, 3 points for the daily schedule log, but I'll warn you that you might want to take this class when you have more time to study for the class. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, but you'll need to study at least 7 additional hours outside of the time you spend in class, which is about 7 hours per week as well. Any question about any of that? All right. If you only turn in 1 log, you'll only get 3 points. But if you turn in 3 and they're complete, you will get 6 points. And like I said, I won't mark you down if I feel you're not taking enough study time for studying, but I will let you know that the average student requires more study time than is required, that you're planning on. Any questions about that? All right, those are the 2 study assignments that are due in the first week. We'll have other study assignments later on, and I'll talk about it when the time becomes appropriate. So that's worth what? 9 points. Remember, the plagiarism quiz is due this week. And then after the lecture, I have the lab, and we'll talk about that in the lab. Any questions about any of this? If not, let's move on. A lot of people are doing the chat. Like I stated, I do not use the chat. I can't even see when somebody asks me a chat message when I'm sharing my screen. So I don't use chat. If you have a question, you should email me. All right, let's go back to the syllabus. You should become familiar with your Canvas and your other resources that Clark College provides. For example, the library has 3 copies of the textbook in the course reserve and a copy of the photographic atlas in the course reserve as well. Become familiar with my Canvas website. having all the important documents for the class. If ever you miss the class, it's your responsibility to find out what you missed and then make it up. And as well as it's your responsibility to access the website and see if I've made any changes. I'll always send you an announcement if I do. Usually I do not. Never mind. You should read about the course description, the general education requirement, student course outcomes. I'm not going to discuss about them. Course policies and suggestions. If you're ill, contact me and I'll help you keep on track in this online class. Please contact me prior to the due dates to make arrangements for late work. If you contact me after the due dates, you may get a late penalty for turning in the assignment. Preparation for class. Consult the lecture and the lab schedule frequently. You should read the material before it is covered to help you understand the material. The course can be very busy, and you really should read the labs beforehand, although this is an online class, so you could read it while you're doing the lab. And then always review the material before the quizzes and the exam. Cell phone use, you can read about that. Attendance and participation, really only the first week of the class, I will be taking attendance. However, that doesn't mean that I don't know who will be attending and who will not be attending. I can look on right here, going through here, who's attending the Zoom session, and I can go look online for who has been attending my website for who's been looking at the class. And I know a lot of students in the past have been skipping the labs. Let me inform you that you are required to either attend the Zoom session live with me now, as you guys are, or view them online at my website. And this includes the lab. If you do not do that, you will easily become confused. And if you ask a question and it's apparent to me that you have not attended either the class or viewed the class online, I will tell you, well, you need to view the class online before I'm going to step in and help you. So I do expect class students to attend the class either online, meaning view the web class, my web page at youtube.com, or attend the Zoom class. If you miss too many lab assignments, you will get a reduction in the lab grade. And if you miss the first week of lab, that is lab 00 and lab 01, you will be dropped from the course. I will be dropping students by Friday, 5 p.m. And that's why the first lab and the second lab, meaning lab 00 and lab 01, due the first week, have to be turned in by Friday at 8 a.m. Any question about any of that?
I just have a quick clarification question. Labs are every Tuesday and Thursday, correct?
Generally, yes.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to be explaining detail and material in the class. That's why there's a strong correlation between attendance and a student's final grade. If you want to earn a good grade, it's simple. Simply come to class, take notes, ask questions, and then review the material. Online classes will have an assigned due date. You only have 24 hours to take the quiz. and if they're a miss, they may not be made up. After about 2 days, the answer will show for the quizzes. And after the answers show, you may not take the quiz late. Any question about that? That's actually the policy of the Clark microbiology classes that the quizzes have to be taken within 24 hours. It's to help on reduced cheating. As I stated, artificial intelligence may be used in this class. However, if you use AI, even if you restate it in your own words, please put it in quotes and provide a reference. I want to know how many people, students are using AI in the class. And my guess is eventually everyone will. But my main purpose is just to document what proportion of the class is using AI and who is not, but how many are not. You are expected, I mentioned that, to either tune the Zoom sessions or the YouTube Lite. You are expected to pre-read the lab modules, the assignments, the handouts, bring them to class when appropriate. You're expected to know the due dates of the assignment. They're in the syllabus, they're in Canvas. You are expected to obtain all materials if you miss class. Your responsibility to find out what you missed. Keep all papers until the final grade is given. That way, if there's a question, you can show me the evidence. You're expected to abide by the student code of conduct, especially as it applies to academic honesty issues. Cheating and plagiarism are not allowed in college. Failure to abide by the student code of conduct, you will be penalized. And I never mentioned plagiarism is extremely important, not only in college, but in real life. There was actually a sitting senator who, I think he was from Nebraska, had to resign his Senate seat because it was discovered when in graduate school he plagiarized someone for his dissertation or thesis, one of the two. And then you probably don't know this, but the first time President Biden was running for the presidency, it was something like 1976 or 1982, something like that. He actually had to not resign, but uh, stop running for the presidency because he had plagiarized somebody else's script. It was a friend, and his friend sent him the script, and he thought it was pretty good, and then he went and used it as if he had written it, and that was plagiarizing. He didn't state where the speech came from. So plagiarism is important. You should know the lab safety rules and following them. This isn't really important because we're going to be an online class or a remote class. And all interactions, including student to instructor, and instructor to student, should be professional, cordial, businesslike. This includes all communications, emails. Everything should be phrased in positive, non-confrontational, non-offensive language. We all must respect each other, even if we strongly disagree. So those are your responsibilities. My responsibilities are the follow. I'll try to respond to all Canvas emails within 48 hours. If you email me at clark.edu, I'll try to respond within about a half a week. I'll try to have all assignments graded within a week of their due date. There are two big lab assignments, the infectious disease project and the unknown project, which take me days to grade. This may take me longer than a week to grade. So those I do not guarantee when they will be graded, but it usually is longer than a week after you turn it in. I may not finish them until finals week. And if our labs are graded 2 times, The first grading will be done within a week. The second grading will be done whenever I have time. And because the second grading will take a back seat to the first grading, it may not be graded until near the end of the term. Any question about any of that? All right. Fourth withdrawal, you can read about that. Late assignments, all work is due on the due date, the time listed on the schedule or in the Canvas webpage. The penalty for all late assignments is there will be a 25% markdown 1 day late. After that, everything will be 50% marked down. I do not accept late assignments during finals week, so get in all late week before finals week. If you have something to be turned in late, you're going to have to email it to me at the Canvas email site because Canvas does not accept anything late. Any questions? Somebody, you should silence your microphone.
Oh, wow, thank you. That means a lot. A lot for us to have you here. We were just talking and saying it looks like it's an Avengers reunion here tonight.
All right. Cheating and plagiarism are not allowed. If you do either, you will be marked down, and you may be marked down to 0%. You can read about the etiquette for Zoom, the cheating, and the student conduct there. College-wide information. Let me just state that this class is online, so I should be able to meet even if Clark College is closed down for bad weather. If for some reason you are not able to attend the Zoom session, you should be able to see the class online at my web site, my YouTube site. The only time this class will not meet is if ever either the Zoom is down or the internet access at the Clark College is down. That's once happened, but generally it does not happen.
Hello.
Please mute your microphone unless you have a question or a comment. All right. Some suggested study methods, like most science classes, microbiology is going to be challenging. You're going to be learning a whole bunch of new vocabulary, new concepts. We're going to have several assignments due at the same time. You may feel stressed. To alleviate some of the stress, please understand the commitment you are about to undertake. To be successful, most students should set aside sufficient study time. The average student study time will be 7 hours a week in class per week, and then 7 hours a week studying and getting your assignments due outside of class. If external responsibilities do not allow you to spend 14 hours of time on this class, maybe you should take this class at another quarter when you can spend the time for the class that you need. Any questions about any of that? And if you are thinking of dropping the class, you should drop, I think, by Friday, 5 p.m. to get 100% refund. There is an 80% refund or 90% refund, something like that. And I'm not sure when the drop is because this is something fairly new at Clark. Clark College requires all graduates to comprehend fundamental principles, so comprehension is required by this class, and there will be a few comprehension questions on the exams. Each student learns differently, and you should take a look at how you learn. Are you a visual learner, an auditory learner, a reading, writing learner, etc.? And to find out, you can go to www.vark.learn.com, etc. Find out what your learning style is. Here's learning list of suggestions for what you can do to effectively study. Obviously, use what works for you. The first is take on manageable chunks of material. If you try to learn too much at one time, unless you're brilliant, you will be counterproductive. It will not pay off. So learn in manageable chunks of material. Use concept mapping to help you learn. You can click on this link to find out about that. You can be organized. There will be several concurrent assignments. You may feel lost without proper organization. You should use the first 10 to 15 minutes before class to both skim the previous class notes and those of your upcoming class. This will help you remember where we left off and will get you into the proper mindset for class. Come to class. That sounds simple, but many instructors, including you, have noticed a strong correlation between attendance and grades. Obviously, quizzes will be on material covered in the lecture. This sounds a bit stupid to say, but you must listen in class. Some students are either doing something else or they're spending so much time writing copious notes, they're not actually listening. The work you do during lecture will largely determine your success on the quizzes and the final. What you should do is listen, but take short, skimpy notes. And then as soon as class is finished or as soon as you have time, within 24 hours, go over your notes and add things to them. You must do that within 24 hours because after 24 hours, short-term memory will disappear and you will not be able to add to the notes. You should also take notes because the best way students learn is from their own notes. I will encourage you to take your own notes, both by the fact that I am not going to provide the PowerPoint presentation until after the lesson is covered. That will encourage you to take your own notes, and then you can go over your PowerPoint and add to your notes. And that will help you learn the material. And you should also take notes because if you simply listen, you will only learn about 10% of the material. If you listen and take notes, you're going to be transferring information from one part of your brain to another part of the brain. So you'll actually learn 20% of the material. That's still low, but that's twice as much if only listening. And then what you should do is go over the material repeatedly to learn the material closer to 100%. You don't ever get 100%, but close to it. Unless you're brilliant and you have like a photographic memory, you never learn 100% of the material. I was going to say something else and now I've forgotten what it was. Oh, if I do not have the PowerPoint slides up, a few days after we finish the lesson, you can send me an email to remind me to put the PowerPoint up. Like I said, I will put them up after I finish the lesson. They will not be up before I finish the lesson. I do have something up though. I have an overview and the objectives for chapter 1 and the study notes for chapter 1 and chapter 10 up. The overview gives you just an overview of the class and the, sorry, I can't get a hold of that. The objectives. the main parts of that lesson for chapter 1. All of the quiz questions will come from the objectives. And then there's objectives to chapter 10. We're going to cover chapter 10 with, or at least part of chapter 10 with chapter 1. And the study guide actually has the notes in paragraph format, not in the PowerPoint slide format, but it's pretty similar to what we're discussing. So you may take your notes on these notes if you want, or just use these to fill in your own notes. So those are available to you at the start of the class. In chapter 1 and maybe chapter 2, I've got it broken down into the overview and objectives and the study guide. All other chapters only have a study guide, which will have the objectives at the start of the study guide, and then the notes after the objectives and the overview. Assuming this shows, this is the first week, so the Clark College webpage is probably overloaded. There we go. The objectives, and then you scroll down, and there's the chapter 3 notes. Any question about any of that? All right, grading. This class is, of course, graded. Plagiarism quiz will be 20 points. There will be 5 quizzes at 75 points each, but you get to drop the lowest quiz so that there will only be 300 points in the quizzes. Remember, all quizzes require Respondus Lockdown Browser. Some of them do require Respondus Monitor. Will be worksheets in the lab for a total of 50 points, generally one worksheet for each lab. And then there will be at least one worksheet for each lecture. Some of the lectures will have 2 worksheets for a total of 25 points in the lecture worksheets. There will be 75 points for the identification of the unknown bacteria project, where you'll write up a lab report, 75 points. The infectious disease research project, another lab project that'll be worth 100 points. There will be the cumulative final exam worth 150 points. So the total breakdown of the points, 20 points for the plagiarism quiz, 300 points for the quizzes. You get to drop the lowest quiz. Lab assignments for 50 points. Identification of the unknown project for 75 points. The infectious disease project for 100 points. 25 points for the lecture worksheets. And then 150 points for the final, for a grand total of 720 points. That doesn't include extra credit points, where there will be about 20 extra credit points given in the term. The grading scale is A is greater than 92%, an A minus greater than 90%, a B plus greater than 88%, a B greater than 82%, a B minus greater than 80%. There is no C minus, but there is a C plus and a C. And then there is no D plus or D minus, but there is a D, and then of course an F. Note that this grading scale is a little different than the grading scale in Canvas. So if you're close to the border, realize that the Canvas grading scale is not quite correct. I'll let you read about question review and written corrections, the microscope use in the lab, support services for students. There is a counseling and health center. Take a look at my syllabus for that, or Clark webpage. There's tutoring services. There is a tutor at Clark this term for microbiology. In fact, there's two. One's a nursing student and the other a general microbiology student. There's also online tutoring at etutoringonline.org. Accommodations, I will let you read about that. Canal Library. I'll let you read about that. Compass Computer Resources, can find out about that. Important college-wide information. You got to go to clark.edu syllabi. Mainly is important with the winter and Clark College closing. It's not terribly important for us. Safety and security. There's a crisis line at Clark. I'll let you read about that. Other services for students, help with food, housing, financial challenges. I'll let you read about that. Enrollment dates and deadline. You can view the calendar for the enrollment dates and the deadlines, as well as find them on the Canvas main web page. Many of them are in the syllabus, but realize that there is a lecture and a lab assignment due the week of the topic or the chapter. And so that will be every Saturday at 11:59 p.m. And that is not on the syllabus, but it is on the web page as well as the calendar. You can look on the enrollment dates and deadlines. Read about one-stop assistance. Read about regional accommodations for religion and conscious. The camera on Zoom, turning on your camera during Zoom class is not required, but it may be during some exams. It is during some exams. I should word it that way. It will be required during some exams. And read about important college-wide student information and translation services. You can read about the non-discrimination policy and the school emergency procedures at Clark College. I'll talk about the safety information for students and physicians in the lab. Let me briefly talk about the words of advice and comfort. Sometimes it seems like instructors are your enemies. It is true we have to maintain standards so that we may not always be able to accommodate you. However, know that we want you all to succeed and that the greatest joy in teaching is interacting with you, our students, getting to know you and helping you achieve your academic goals. So if you have any problems, complaints, or concerns, come and discuss it with us, or me in this case. The earlier the better. Don't let it fester. Festering usually makes things worse. And I'll try and help you out. And hopefully, maybe you can even have some fun in this class. I'll let you read about the lab safety rules. We'll cover that in the lab. All right, so here's the schedule. On the leftmost column, we have the week and the days. On the right, next to the leftmost column, we have the lecture topics and exams. I'll talk a little bit about that. And then on the rightmost column, the laboratory schedule. So today we're going to be talking about technology session, the syllabus, which I've essentially already covered, tips for success, which we covered a few of them. You'll be learning about some scientific vocabulary, and then we'll start chapter 1, the microbial world in you. And included in chapter 1 will be part of chapter 10, the section on the classification of microorganisms. And that will be for this version of the textbook, meaning Clark College version 3. It'll be pages 264 to 272. You can use an older textbook, but then it's your responsibility to figure out what pages to read. And that usually only happens with chapter 1. I don't think I've assigned pages to any other chapters. Let me quickly go through this so I can get this to work. Yeah, generally I've got on there the entire chapter. So I don't have pages except for chapter 10. Any questions about any of this? If not, let's go on. Oh, like I stated, there are some assignments which will be due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. This is always the lecture worksheet and the lab worksheets. And these due dates are not shown on the schedule. All other dates are shown on the schedule. All right, any question about the syllabus? If not, let's go to the chapter 1, microbiology, biology 260, chapter 1, microbial world and you. And in this chapter, we'll talk a little bit about chapter 10, but only the classification of microorganisms in chapter 10. As is normal, I have a slide, usually the first slide, but in this case, the second slide, discussing the major goals of chapter 1 and a rough outline. Know the terms of all the chapters. What's a microbe? What's a microorganism? What's a germ? What's a pathogenic microbe? What's a parasitic organism? What's a microbiota? What's infectious disease, emerging infectious disease? What's pasteurization? And what's Koch's postulates? You can find all of these and all of the objectives in the objectives. This is only a few of the objectives, but the major ones. And then 2, we're going to discuss about a brief history of microbiology. And then 3, the importance of microbes to both the world and people. Any questions about what we're going to cover? If not, let's begin by talking about the importance of microbes. This is showing you the nitrogen cycle, where we can say that nitrogen starts, actually can start anywhere, but we're going to start it in nitrogen in the atmosphere. Some of that nitrogen can be pulled down by bacteria and archaea and fixed in an organic compound where they change nitrogen in the air into some organic compound. And then when this organism dies, it will decompose into ammonia and ammonium. And green plants and algae can use this source of nitrogen. They don't really like it. You give them too much ammonia, and that will actually kill the green plant. Probably kill the algae. I'm not positive on that. But that is one way the nitrogen can change from in the atmosphere to an organic compound in an organism, decompose into ammonia. Ammonia can be used by green plants. It can also be used by bacteria that undergo nitrification, bacteria and archaea, converting ammonia or ammonium into nitrite. And then we have other bacteria that can convert nitrites into nitrates. This is a source of nitrogen that all green plants love. It's one of the main ingredients in plant fertilizer. Doesn't kill the plant if you give it too much. Well, actually, it does if you burn it, but you have to give it a very high dose before it will harm the plant. We'll just word it that way. And then plants, when they decompose by organisms that are decomposers, organisms that digest something that's alive, which are always bacteria, fungi, or worms, and they will release that organic compound of nitrogen and convert it into nitrate. And then nitrate can be denitrified by bacterium archaea, converting the nitrate into nitrogen gas, which will then join the Earth's atmosphere. Any question about any of that? All right, so that's the nitrogen cycle. Wherever we have a red arrow, this portion of the nitrogen cycle is largely running if not entirely running, by a microbe. So as you can see, we have a lot of red arrows because most of the steps in the nitrogen cycle require microbes, different microbes, to convert the nitrogen from one form to another, or a microbe to decompose the source of nitrogen into ammonia or ammonium. And then we have microbes converting that ammonia into nitrite. Nitrite is converted by microbes into nitrate. So most of the steps in the nitrogen cycle happen because microbes convert nitrogen from one form to another. Any question about any of that? Well, that's important in life because if the nitrogen cycle didn't run, then all nitrogen would accumulate in the nitrogen cycle and there wouldn't be a cycle. Most likely, when the plant and other organic matter died, it wouldn't be decomposed, and then it would just build up on the planet surface of the planet Earth. Any question about that? So nitrogen microbes controlling the amount of nitrogen and regulating it are very important for the ecosystem because without them, nitrogen would not recycle in the ecosystem. All right, any questions about nitrogen and how it's important? We also have microbes that can actually eat rock. Some microbes can obtain nutrients from rock, and in doing so, they break down the rock. This can lead to the formation of soils. Now, let me state that most soil does not come from the breakdown of the rock by a microbe. Most soil comes from erosion, either by the wind or the water. But a significant portion comes from microbes making the soil. Any question about that? So obviously microbes are important because they help make the soil. This graph is showing you the atmospheric oxygen level during Earth's history. At the present, we have oxygen around 21%, but if you look back in time, that oxygen decreased. And that's simply because the oxygen is being recycled in the ecosystem and then being released as nitrogen, as oxygen for green plants and other organisms like animals to use. When we go back in time, we'll note the oxygen level decreases until a point where the oxygen level was increasing and then plateaued. This happened fairly early in the Earth's history, about 2.7 to 1.8 billion years ago. Where oxygen first became present in the atmosphere. Before that, there was no oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere. UV light always hit ozone and then scattered it, making some UV light. However, scientists weren't sure how to collect it, and until recently, they've never collected oxygen or any other element, largely because of technology. Recently, they've been able to detect that, and you could always like put air through liquid nitrogen at a certain temperature. The nitrogen would freeze out of the air, the argon would freeze out of the air, leaving the oxygen. Then you bring it to a certain temperature, then the oxygen will become liquefied oxygen. And then earlier in the Earth's history, there was no oxygen in the atmosphere. So the first 2 billion years of Earth's history, oxygen level was at 0%. So the oxygen level on the Earth has changed over time. Most people probably think it's probably because of plants. That's not correct. We have algae and microscopic organisms like microscopic bacteria, which have a photosynthesis trapping pigment, which collects light and then converts it into chemical energy to make our ATP. We'll talk more about ATP later in this lesson, but for the moment, you just need to know that life can store energy up, and then it will convert that storage, like starch, into energy in the CO light, the watch. Why we're talking about energy here, we're supposed to be talking about oxygen, but um, there are green microbes as well as green plants, which have a photosynthesis trapping pigment, which releases oxygen. And actually, initially, all of this early oxygen in the Earth's atmosphere came about because of microbes, which could engage in photosynthesis and then release the oxygen into the air, which it then went to 1 to 5%, and then rose a little bit higher so that the oxygen could form ozone in the Earth's atmosphere, blocking the UV light. That allowed life to come on land, green plants to evolve, and then green plants evolved, bringing the oxygen up to the present day level of 21%. However, only about half of that oxygen in the current Earth atmosphere comes from green plants. The other half comes from microbes, like algae shown here. Any question about any of that? Without the first oxygen being there, UV light would have killed all life on the surface of the planet Earth, being on the land. And until that was blocked by UV light by oxygen forming ozone, life could not live on the land. But once ozone built up, blocking the UV light, we then had the land colonized by algae and simple animals, which then developed later into more complex and organisms and plants. Any question about any of that? All right, this plant is showing you a sewage treatment plant. Humans are obviously responsible for generating the waste product that we flush down our toilets and our drains. And it looks like humans are building this waste treatment plant for breaking down waste, right? Isn't that a good assumption? That the breaking down of the waste happens by humans building this facility here? Anyone disagree? Anyone agree?
I agree with you. I had to get my unmuted.
Okay, that's fine. Actually, that's not correct. Humans do not break down the organic waste that's in the water and we flush down our toilets and our sinks. It's actually the
Bacteria.
microbes that are growing in this water here that will break down the organic waste. Humans only build the facility that allow the microbes to grow, and then the microbes break down the organic waste. So microorganisms are important to the planet Earth and to humans, such as breaking down waste, recycling organic matter, recycling plants when they die, like the tree falls over in the forest, microbes and mushrooms will start breaking it down. recycling the nutrients. All right, I mentioned microorganisms and microbes. These terms are usually used interchangeably. Let's define them now. A microorganism is an organism that is so small you need to see it under a microscope. A microbe is something similar, but it doesn't have to be an organism. Like viruses and prions are so small they don't have cells. Prions don't even have DNA. Prions and viruses are called microbes. Some authors, including maybe your own, do call them a microorganism. That's not exactly correct because viruses and prions do not have cells. They are not an organism, but they are a microbe. They can cause disease. Many of the microbes are microorganisms. I won't quiz you on the difference between these two terms because some authors use microbe and microorganism synonymously. I don't quite, meaning I don't consider viruses and prions a microorganism because I do not consider them an organism. To be an organism, you must have a cell, you must have DNA, and so I will call them a microbe. Any question about that? So what is a microorganism? It includes all single-celled organisms that come in many shapes and sizes. They include all bacteria, all archaea, all yeast, many but not all molds, like a mushroom that you either eat or see in the forest, is not a microbe. All protozoans and some algae, if they're microscopic, they are a microbe. However, the kelp that blows up or washes up on the Oregon and Washington beaches is not a microbe. If you can see it with your eyes, it's really not a microbe. And then a microbe is a virus and a prion in addition. Some authors call them a microorganism. I do not. So realize that viruses and prions are special. They are not organisms. They do not have cells. They do not have DNA. But they can cause disease, why we call them a microbe. Microbes are almost everywhere, so we talk about them as the ubiquity of microorganisms. They play beneficial roles in numerous processes on the planet Earth. Like I mentioned, the nitrogen cycle runs because of microbes. And microbes are easily the most numerical and abundant life form on the planet Earth. Any question about any of that? All right, I think I'm going to stop here and I will continue from here in the next lesson. Are there any questions before I go? If not, for those in the 6:30 lab, I'll see you in the 6:30 lab. If there's no questions, I'm going to